I've got a really big day planned. There's some things I want to do in the greenhouse, some things I want to do outside, but I've got to think about supper. I cook supper most every day unless we're having leftovers. And about once a week, Corey and Austin come over and eat with us, which is really nice. We really enjoy it. So tonight, that's when they're coming to eat this week. So I've got to go ahead this morning and kind of think about what I want so that when I'm out busy all day, when I come back in at supper time, I won't even have to think about it. I'll just start cooking. So it's nice that I'm gonna cook kind of from my pantry today. That's the great thing about having a garden and putting up food, is that you have kind of your kind of stockpile. Of course, I go to the grocery store every week. I still buy stuff from the grocery store, but it's wonderful to have the stuff that you know that you grew, or in the case of the meat we're having that Matt harvested, the deer. The corn was grown just down the road. We don't get to grow corn anymore, but it was grown just down the road here, and we put it up last summer. So really, really rewarding to do that. So I've got some of Matt's deer meat, we say, it's venison, laid out. And him and Papa Tony, years and years and years ago, when they've hunted Matt's whole life, man, I'm sure Papa hunted before that, but they purchased a meat cuber from an old grocery store in Canton. So they still have that cuber. So this is some cube meat. And what that means is it's just like pieces of the deer. You could do the same. You can buy cube steak or even cubed pork and make it yourself too. But you might see it at the grocery store. But you just run the pieces of meat through that, and it goes through something that tenderizes it, and it leaves kind of little cube looking places on it. It's often why people call it a cuber. Anyway, that's what we're going to have for our meat. We're going to have some of the corn from Farmer Tim, and I just freeze my corn, so I've got that set out. I've got my green beans from last year, and I usually make 2 quarts for all of us to eat, and they mostly get eaten up. So I've got those. I'm going to make green beans. I've also got a few of our butternut squash from last year left, so I think I'm gonna use these 2 and just roast them in the oven. So that will be really good. I'll probably make a cake of cornbread, pone of cornbread, and that will be our bread. And then I want to have some kind of dessert, so I was thinking about that. Last year was so great for blackberries. It's the first time in a long time that I was able to actually not just make blackberry jelly, which I do every year, but also just to can some blackberries. So here's some blackberries. And so I thought I would make a blackberry cobbler. This will be really good for all of us, except for Austin. He doesn't like he has some health issues that he can't eat the little seeds that are in there. So then I thought, well, this is like a little small jar. I could just make kind of a half blackberry cobbler and a half peach. I've got some peaches that we canned, so I'll do that. So that will be our dessert. Sounds like a really yummy meal. Now, a lot of people have asked me, since I do some videos about pickles and, canning and whatever, and talk about putting up food from our garden, how long does it last, and do you eat it all? Those are some of the common questions I get. Well, I'm one of those believers, one of those people that believe as long as the seal stays intact, it can last literally years. Now, you should, of course, do your own due diligence. You got to be responsible for you, like I'm responsible for me and my family. And if it was moldy, or if the seal was undone, then I would just toss it. Even if it was just last year and for some reason it didn't seal, I would toss it out. But it literally will last for years. Now it's funny how, and the people that say, do you eat it all? It's funny, some years it's like we eat, it's kind of like maybe our tastes vary, or maybe it's that we put up more of one thing from one year to the next. So some years we will eat all of everything, whether it's the green beans or whatever. And then the next year we won't. Somehow we just didn't go through everything that we put up. Well, those extra ones I just save, and we can continue to eat those. But I also, and you can even, there's 2 ways, I guess, what I'm trying to say of looking at it. You could say, well, eat all your old stuff first. But I was raised by a man, Pap, my daddy, who always said, no, use your good first. Use whatever you've got that is the best first, and that way as you move forward, you'll always be using your best. And when you first hear that, you're kind of like, well, that don't really make sense. You should use everything that you've got first and then start. But then when you really think about it, you think, well, he's right. Would I want to be eating 2-year-old green beans or a year-old green beans? So I kind of, after a certain point in the season, like the ones right now that I still have down there from last year, I will continue to eat, and maybe we'll eat them all because we don't have many left this year. But if there's 1 or 2 cans left, those might hang out for another year or two, and they may never get opened until I need them. It's kind of like, I'm not really a prepper, but you think about that. I kind of consider that my prepping, so those jars that don't get eaten. And then this time next year, instead of eating like, so what would that be, 21, if I had a few jars left from then, I will go ahead and eat my 23 first, or if it was 22, I guess is what I should have said. I would go ahead and eat my 23 first. I'll eat my best first moving forward. And you know, the thing with green beans or anything you put up, whether it's pickles or peaches or blackberries or whatever, and a lot of canned food too that you just buy from the store, there is like a best, you know, it's going to be best the freshest it is, like as far as the green beans. And as you go on past that, it's not that it's going to be bad for you or make you sick or anything, but it may not just be as good as it would have been, you know. It's the same thing, you have those best buy dates on your cans. A lot of times you can eat that stuff afterwards. It just may be a little bit softer, you know, a little bit mushier. It may not be as at its prime, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But again, if you're thinking about it in a way, it's where you're just gonna save it just in case if you had to have it. That's kind of how I look at it. But everybody has to look at it their own way. And it is funny, like I said, some years it's like we eat all the, like 14-day pickles, for example. They're gone. They're all gone. And then next year, maybe we won't eat them all, so there'll be a few of them hanging out. And another reason, I forgot to mention, one of the most important reasons about holding on to your old jars is sometimes what happens is, like, for instance, the 14-day pickles, like on the year that I run out of them, or on the year I don't run out of them and I have extra jars left at the beginning of the summer, my cucumbers, what if they don't do good? And sometimes that happens, so I don't have enough cucumbers to actually make 14-day pickles, so thank goodness I've got a few from the, you know, a year or so ago, and they're still good and we still use them. And a lot of people kind of look at their gardening like that, so they're like, this is the year that I'm going to can a lot of green beans. I'm going to focus on green beans, and then I'm not going to can any green beans for probably 2 years. And next year I'm going to focus on tomatoes. That's all. I'm just going to worry about tomatoes. And then I'm not going to worry about tomatoes for the next 2 years. You know, they kind of look at it like that. Like, I've got a big storehouse of this, so once we take us about 2 years to go through it, then I'll worry about it again. So there's so many different variations of how, if you're someone that gardens and wants to put up your food for your pantry, there's just so many different ways to keep a pantry of food like that. And everyone just has to find their own way. I kind of do mine, I guess I'm following in the footsteps of Granny, that's how she would do hers. If there was some jars of something left over, she just saved them just in case, because you never know. Whatever it was in it might not grow well that year, or, you know, if hard times come along, you might need to eat it. And if you are someone just new to gardening, another thing that may happen if you're putting up food is that you may put up something and think that's what you should do, and then you find out your family just don't like it. They just don't like it. So it just don't get eat. So in that situation, I would advise you, you know, you do have to think about what you like. Like at this point in my life, I know what we'll eat and what we don't really care for. So I kind of have mine down pat, but I've been doing it too for many, many years. Close to 20 years, I guess. So you got to kind of think about it like that too. Will my family actually eat this or not? So now that I've shared a bit about my pantry of food that we put up or harvest every year, I'm going to go out and get to work. And then later in the day, when I'm ready to start actually cooking supper, I'll be sure to bring you along with me. Okay, it's getting close to supper time, so I'm going to go ahead and put my green beans on. I've drained them and put them in my pot. I've got some bacon in there with them. Lots of people don't drain their green beans. I drain mine and put fresh water in because that's how Granny did hers, so that's what I do. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. The bacon's, I'm just using bacon, so it's not all that salty, but I'm going to add a little. I might add a little bit of pepper too. And then I'm just going to fill water up to cover them. Now usually when I cook beans, I like to cook them for, even if the ones that have been canned, for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, something like that. But you could technically eat them straight out of the can because they've been pressurized and they're done. We like our beans really soft, really done, really, if you're cooking with meat like the bacon, really to take on that flavor. So I'm going to turn these up pretty high and let them be cooking while I'm doing everything else. Sometimes also I like to put just a little bit of extra oil, so I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil. And I'm going to cover these and let them be cooking while I get to cutting up my butternut squash. Before I start on the squash and on the, got to get my cobblers in the oven, I am going to go ahead and just put my corn in the pot, but I'm not going to turn it on yet. Smells so good. Oh my goodness. This is Silver Queen corn. Now when I cook my corn that I've had in the freezer, you can kind of see in there's a little bit of moisture that's just left from the milk that come out of the corn. I don't add anything else, but I add some butter and some salt, a little bit of salt. And then I just kind of cook it slowly. Really, I'm just warming it. I'm just warming it up. But I won't turn it on until we're closer till time to eat. But that's all I do. Very simple the way we like our corn. We prefer it straight off the roasting ear in the summer, straight out of the garden. But it's good this way too. Okay, I'm ready to whip up my cobblers and put them in the oven. I've melted some butter in my pans. I'm using 2 8x8, I think they are. Normally I would just use one large one to equal that size. In my bowl over here, I've got 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of flour, and 1 cup of milk. You've probably seen this cobbler recipe before and probably seen lots of different variations. Granny does one where she doesn't melt the butter. She puts the batter in and then the fruit and then cuts the butter on top. Just about any way you mix it up, it will be good. It will turn out a good cobbler. I do have a cobbler recipe where I talk more about that, so I'll be sure to link to that so that you can go and see it if you've never had this before, but I bet you have. So I'm just going to even it between both. I'm going to have to go get me a spatula to get the rest of it out. Should have thought of that first. You don't stir it or anything like that. You just let it stay just like it is. And then you take your fruit and lay it on top. Hope I didn't get more in one or the other. Oh well, it'll just be what it is. So I may not use all of these peaches because normally this is how much peaches I would use for an entire pan. Corey and Katie will scoff them up though. They love the peaches, so won't have to worry about something happening to them. Or won't have to worry about them going to waste, I should say. And put some little juice on there too, so that will be good. Now for this one, other one is going to be the blackberry one. Scoop down in there and get some of those wonderful blackberries. So satisfying to know that we canned these last year and now we're going to get to enjoy them. Hopefully this summer will be as good for blackberries as last summer was. Okay, I'm going to put these back in the oven on 350 and let them bake until they're golden brown on top. Usually it takes about 40 to 50 minutes, something like that. And as for the leftover blackberries, I'm just going to pop them in the refrigerator and I'll use them for something. I might even drink some of the juice. Oh, or I know what I could do with them. I could make my next batch of kefir with them. That's what I'll do. I've got my cornbread pan in the oven heating up so that it'll be nice and hot when I put the batter in. And I've got the butternut cut up, so I'm gonna go ahead and put some olive oil on it. Not too much, just a little. Kind of give it a good toss. And put it out on my baking dish. Throw it around. And you could use whatever seasonings you want. I'm just going to use salt and pepper. And I am going to, after I get it seasoned, some salt and pepper. I'm going to drizzle some honey on it. It's going to be a slow drizzle if I don't beat that. Could also just, instead of drizzling, if you wanted to, add it to your bowl. Could have just added a spoonful to the bowl of when I was adding the olive oil. Could have done it that way. I don't put too much, just enough to sweeten it a little. And then I'm going to put it in the oven. I'm going to bake it at, or roast it really, at 450. It usually takes about 20 minutes. Maybe a little longer than that if you want to get the little brown edges around that really make it taste good. Okay, got the cobblers out of the oven and they're looking good. It's gonna be delicious. Okay, I'm finally ready to fry the meat, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn my corn on too while I'm doing that. On about medium low, I guess, and just kind of let it be melting and that butter mixing together with the corn. My beans are pretty much done, so I'm gonna turn them off. Just let them sit there with the lid on, and they're kind of on the, since the oven's on, they'll stay plenty warm for us until we're ready to eat. See if my oil is ready. I can start putting my meat in. Put 2 or 3 pieces. Get them really covered good. Put a few more. So I put a few pieces in, get them covered with the flour. I just got flour and salt and pepper, nothing special. Just put a few at a time. And then I can begin to find them and put them in to fry. Okay, first pan's ready. A few more pans to go. I like to put it out on a rack just to let the grease drain off and kind of keep it crispy while the rest of it's cooking. All right, we finally got it all fixed. Matt said he was in a dilemma. He didn't know if he wanted pickle beans and corn or just regular corn. I said, well, you just have to get both.
I will never, ever, ever pass up pickle beans and corn no matter what else is on the table. It's one of my favorites.
Especially Papa Tony's. They're the best.
Yeah, it makes me mad I can't do them as good as he does. These are spectacular good.
You just got to have them with deer meat and cornbread.
I do. I guess I'll get me a little bit of that too.
Break on you?
Yeah, it's just an awkward place for me to get it.
Okay, looks like a feast, huh?
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Get out of here, you creep.
Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
This is a feast. I love this butternut squash. Or is it a candy root?
No, it's butternut
I
squash.
have that right.
The really satisfying part is, besides it's so good, is that so much of it that we put up. Right. Not the cornbread, but a lot of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, time for dessert now, Matt. We've got peach cobbler and blackberry cobbler. So take your pick. Or maybe both, some of both.
That's what I'm talking about. A little bit of both.
Too bad I don't have some ice cream for you, but I don't.
Well, that's all right. We could put some of our popsicles on it.
Yeah, put a popsicle on it. I don't know what that'd be like, but
I'd eat it.
yeah. So this is made with some of our blackberries we picked last year and I canned, and then some of the peaches we canned last year. Of course, we didn't grow them, but